Good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony DeFio, and I thank you for joining me on this very, very, very frigid Friday evening in Pittsburgh. Last I checked, it's 3 degrees below zero. And as I usually say, I hope it's nice and warm wherever you are, but it doesn't seem like it's warm where anybody is right now. Seems like the United States is the entire country is being hit by some weird winter storm called Elliott. I don't know, but maybe you're in another part of the world where it's tropical and lovely, and I hope that's the case for you on 2 days before Christmas. And before I continue with tonight's show, I want to ask you to please like and subscribe to our Behind the Steel Curtain YouTube channel. We bring you live shows each and every day and night, including this show at every 5 p.m. on Friday Eastern Time. We have the Touchdown Under show with Matty Peverall and Mark Davison. We have the post-game show after every Steelers game, whether it's on Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays, whatever. This week it'll be Saturday night. We have the We Run the North podcast with Kevin Tate and his friends. They talk about all things AFC North related. Monday, we have The Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis, Shannon White, and yours truly. We talk about the previous day's Steelers game. Tuesday, we have the Scobro Show with Dave Schofield and Rich Schofield. Wednesday night, we have Know Your Enemy with Jeffrey Benedict and Shannon. Thursday, we have the Steelers Preview Show with Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, and Brian. I believe that's it. And you can catch all those shows also live on Facebook. And you can catch all those shows after the fact on any audio platform of your choosing. Now, I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, as seems to be a regular occurrence for me on Friday nights anymore. I seem to be getting muted and problems with my mic, but hopefully it wasn't too long and too bad. Anyway, you can catch all of our live shows after the fact on any audio platform of your choosing. I like iHeartRadio, but wherever you can find them, they're there. So if that made any sense. But I'm flustered with my technical difficulties. Anyway, we also have audio-only shows that we record for you, and then you can listen to them on any audio platform of your choosing, including Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, The Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. Here we go, the Steelers Show with Brian Anthony Davis and Kevin Smith. From the Cutting Room Floor with Jeffrey Benedict. What Ian's Talking About with Kyle Kreis and his gang. The Steelers Fix with Andrew Wilbar and Jeremy Betts. The War Room with Matty Peverall. State of the Steelers with Daniel J. Of course, we have anytime there's breaking news, anytime there's a need for a breaking podcast, we'll get that for you as well. And of course, the current commentary film breakdown. Stop shot your Steelers. Devils first in the store tonight. Welcome, Jared Devil. 40 days EQ, who's putting up the frozen emojis. How appropriate. Claude Bishop, who says Merry Christmas, Jared Devil, and everybody else. Jailer Chick 46 and Tony. Well, Merry Christmas to you too. Claude Bishop, and I'm glad you're with us tonight. Says, first we have to talk about something very, very somber depressing. Franco Harris. We all got the news Wednesday morning. I got it first thing Wednesday morning. My brother texted me, and I just couldn't believe it. And then, of course, I started verifying it on Twitter, and every reputable source was confirming the fact that Franco Harris, the Steelers legend and the man who was set to be honored Saturday night by having his number 32 number jersey retired in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, the play that he starred in, the most famous play in the history of the NFL. As far as I'm concerned, the most famous play in the history of sports. And when this sunk in, I just couldn't believe it. It just seemed so surreal, like it was not real. I mean, yeah, he was 72, which I guess a lot of people think is old, but really in today's day and age, is it really considered to be old? No, I mean, our last two presidents were older than that. So, I couldn't believe it. And he seemed to be the picture of health. He was making the rounds in the days and weeks before what was to be his big night, talking about it, doing interviews, interacting with the fans, meet and greets, interview, everything. And, he was being interviewed Tuesday. People spent time with him on Tuesday, talked to him on Tuesday. And he was the picture of health for a 72-year-old man. I mean, he looked to be in fantastic shape. So it was just a shock that this would happen. I mean, it's never a good time for anybody to pass away, but for it to happen days before really the biggest moment of his I mean, it's just a shock. And of course, everybody, you heard countless stories of how much of a accessible figure Franco was in the community with his teammates from the 70s and 80s, obviously even with current players, people like Pat Fryermuth talked about him. Cordell Stewart, he was interviewed the other day. He mentioned the relationship that he had with Harris, and how he always called him Mr. Harris and not Franco, because he was born in the year that Harris came into the league and started in the Immaculate Reception. So, everybody was sharing their stories. Everybody seemingly had a story about Franco. A friend of mine sent me a picture of him posing with Franco recently. I even had a slight encounter with Franco a few years ago. I didn't really meet him initially, but I was waiting to run. I participate in these running groups every week, and I was in Shadyside in front of Mario's bar in Shadyside. There were a group of us, and we're all waiting to get our run started. And I looked to my right, and oh my gosh, it's Franco Harris. And it was like seeing a god walking down the street. I mean, this is to me, a mythical figure from the 70s that I grew up watching as a little kid in the early 80s, walking past me with a few other people. And, I didn't really say anything to him. I didn't want to bother him. Somebody in the crowd shouted out, "Hey, Franco," and then he went about his business. So that's really the closest I got to meeting him. But it seemed like everybody has a story of how they met Franco and how they interacted with him, even ever so briefly. They talk about how accessible he was, how he always took the time to talk to everybody from his old teammates to current Steeler players to these quote important figures to just your everyday fan. He made everybody feel special, like he was their best friend. So you heard those stories, and to me, when I think about Franco Harris and how just much of a part of Pittsburgh, a fixture in Pittsburgh he became, starting in 1972, it kind of reinforces what I said a few months ago when I found out that they were going to be retiring officially his number 32 jersey on the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. And that's it. He kind of started what we know today as Steeler Nation. I mean, he kind of changed the culture within the stands, within the fan base. Meaning, the Steelers were not number one in Pittsburgh for 40 years. They probably weren't even number 2 or 3. I mean, they were down the line in terms of relevance and importance when you're talking about the sports landscape in Pittsburgh. It has been said millions of times that Mean Joe Green changed the culture in the organization, in the locker room. He made sure his teammates were always accountable, and it was always about winning and doing what was best for the team. And he refused to accept losing, and he demanded that of his teammates, of his coaches, even all the way up to the top. I mean, he demanded that they change their way of thinking. And, he took them from the same old Steelers as a player anyway, and to what, they eventually became. And that's one of the marquee franchises in all of sports. So Joe Green's always been credited with that. You ask anybody who's the most important Steeler player ever, who's the best Steeler ever, it's always Joe Green. That's what people say. And it's hard to argue with that. But if you're talking about, if you were to ask me who changed the culture within the fan base, who helped make the Steelers cool and the most important thing in town as far as the passion and the fervor, it was Franco Harris. Because what's the most famous fan club in probably Pittsburgh sports history? And that's Franco's Italian Army. And it started in 1972, Franco's rookie year. He was half African American and half Italian, and because of his Italian heritage, the Italian Army was started, and by the end of the year, he was meeting Frank Sinatra, the chairman of the board. He came and greeted him on a practice field one day. They inducted Sinatra as an honorary member of the Italian Army, and of course, that season, many other player fan clubs popped up. And you saw this all throughout the 70s, right? I mean, you saw the banners, Banizak's Bunch, Lambert's Lunatics, Gorillas, all that stuff, right? You saw this all throughout the 70s. And, during that time as well, the Terrible Towel was created by Myron Cope. And that became like the unifying symbol of the fan base. And, that all coincided with the decline of the steel industry and so many people having to migrate to other parts of the country and even the world for work. And of course, they had to live out that way. They stayed out that way, and wherever they wound up, and they had kids and grandchildren, and they passed that love for the Steelers down to them. So now, like today, when you talk about the fan base, what do you call it? Steeler Nation. And it's worldwide. It's not nationwide. It's worldwide. It's international. And to me, that all started with Franco Harris. He was like the first player, in my opinion, that sort of galvanized the fan base. And it wasn't just Italian people that identified with him. It was African-American people. Everybody identified with him. You're talking about somebody in the early 70s that was of mixed race. And that wasn't an easy thing to have to be in the early 70s. I mean, you're talking about the climate of the time, the sociology of the country in the early 70s, being of mixed race was not easy. And it's not even easy today, but certainly not in the early 70s. Yet Franco was able to transcend all that. And, he was accepted by everybody. He was embraced by everybody. And of course it helped that he was successful right away. I mean, he rushed for 1,000 yards. He was the offensive rookie of the year. And of course, it all culminated in the Immaculate Reception. That just the most improbable play in the history of sports, in my opinion. And, he gave Pittsburgh, the Steelers, their first ever postseason win. So, I just think he meant so much to the fans and to the city of Pittsburgh and to his teammates. And, like I said, Joe Green, he helped to change the culture, the mindset. He helped to bring about a winning mindset in that locker room. But Franco, I think he helped make the Steelers cool and he brought out that passion in people. He made people want to cheer for them, and they became the top team in the city, probably no later than the mid '70s, but certainly it all started in 1972. And he even said it was like the whole city was waiting for that year forever. That magical 1972 season, they had done nothing for 40 years, and suddenly, they're an 11-win team. They win the division, and they win their first playoff game ever. So, that's what, when I think of Franco and what he meant to the organization, I think of it in a way of him helping to create this fan base, this crazy, passionate, sometimes insane fan base that spawns the entire globe. That was Franco's contribution. But even beyond that, I think people, they appreciate the kind of running back he was, but I don't think they actually realize how good he was as a running back. I mean, when you're even though he was the first ballot Hall of Famer, when you're part of such a group of generational players, like true superstar Hall of Fame talent, which there were 10 of them on those 1970s Super Bowl teams. But I think Franco was as good at his position at running back as any Steeler great ever was at theirs. You look at his numbers. First of all, when he retired finally in 1984, after he had his contract dispute with Pittsburgh in training camp that year, and they released him, and he went to Seattle, and he had a cup of tea there before they released him in the middle of the year. He retired with more carries than any player in the history of the NFL. And to me, if you want to talk about, if you need an example of what Franco meant to the Steelers on the field, and their identity, their philosophies, Chuck Noll, his philosophy, what he wanted out of his football team. He always said, before you can win a game, you have to first not lose it, right? And I started with controlling the ball, out-hitting your opponent, winning in the trenches, and, of course, running the ball. And that was their identity, even through the late 70s and into the early 80s, when they were passing it a lot more, with the more liberal rules for once again. Back to Franco and his contributions on the field. He retired with more carries, 2,949, than anybody in the history of the NFL. And to me, that spoke to his durability and his consistency. And people always criticize Franco for going out of bounds rather than trying to get an extra hit in on his way out of, like try to get that one last hit, maybe get one last yard. But to quote Phil Villapiano, who was a Raiders legend, part of those great 70s Steelers Raiders battles. Anybody who ever said that Franco wasn't tough never tried to tackle him. And of course, Villapiano, I mean, he's always been very vocal about the Immaculate Reception and how he thought the Raiders got jobbed But he also became great friends with Franco Harris over the years. I mean, they were great friends. So to me, that's quite an endorsement when you're talking about toughness. This whole, like, Jim Brown was very vocal about, he was almost offended that Harris almost surpassed him in yardage. He almost came out of retirement in 1984 to try to make sure Franco didn't pass him in yardage. That kind of that macho alpha BS. You played 12 plus years in the NFL as a running back, and you accomplished as much as Franco Harris did. You are freaking tough. And he was tough. He was fast. He was big. He was shifty. He could run by you. He could run over you. He could do all those things. And in a weird way, if Franco was on a Bills team, maybe if he swapped places with Walter Payton and was on the Bears, people might recognize him more as an all-time great back. They still do, but I think he was so lumped in with all those other 70s great Steelers superstars that he kind of it's just considered, like all of them, like another cog in the machine, a great machine. But individually, he was fantastic. And when he retired, he was only 192 yards behind Jim Brown. Walter Payton obviously set the record. He broke the record in '84. So Franco, even if he did break it, it would only have been briefly. But he did retire 192 yards behind Jim Brown. And his last regular season game as a Steeler in 1983. He set the record for most 1,000-yard seasons in a career. He surpassed Jim Brown in Cleveland, mind you. You should look that up on YouTube. There's a great channel. It's called Jaguar Gator 9. The guy has great content, and he talked about the controversy during that game. The Steelers wanted the Browns PA announcer to congratulate Franco in Cleveland's stadium for breaking Jim Brown's career mark for 1,000-yard seasons. So to me, that's a testament. And you look at what he did in the postseason, meaning Franco Harris. Here's a guy who has more Super Bowl yards than any running back in the history of the NFL. He started 4 Super Bowls, and to this day, he's second all time in yardage in the postseason, 1,556 yards. Okay. The guy was a fantastic, not just, he's known for the Immaculate Reception, 4-time Super Bowl champion, but he was a fantastic running back. When he came along and began to do his thing, and you look at how his career evolved, when he was done, I mean, he was as good as any running back who ever came before him or during his career. He was that good to be that durable and be that consistent and be that clutch in the big games that like he was. I mean, Franco Harris, obviously, he's gotten all the accolades he ever needed, both on the field and after his during his career and after his career. But I think people need to just look up his numbers and see just what he did, and not just regular season, but postseason, the consistency, and see where he ranks. You look at the running backs that came before him and played during his career. He's still number one, I think, in carries for the running backs that played during his time. I think he's still ahead of them, if I'm not mistaken, or he's close anyway. And as far as yardage, he's still right up there with all his contemporaries. And of course, the people who came before him, he's ahead of them. So just check it out. Go on Pro Football Reference and look up Franco Harris's stats. They speak for themselves. So on that note, at the 24:45 mark, I will take this time to allow you to hear a word from our sponsors, and I will be right back. Do not go anywhere. All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the second half of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, Tony Defio, and thank you for sticking with me. it's not been obviously the news of Franco's passing has made it a difficult week and sort of a surreal show for me. But it's also technical difficulties had me a little bit peeved off. But I better not swear because I might not get anything for Christmas. It's only 2 days away. But let's see. We have the live chat here, and this is from Steeler Nation 412. I hope God saved a seat up there for Franco because it's going to be an electric game. The whole city of Pittsburgh will be counting on the Steelers to win it for him. Yeah, I mean, it's again, when you think about it, all the festivities the Steelers had planned for Saturday night, all the greats from the 70s, or a lot of them anyway, were in town or are in town for this occasion. But I think I heard an interview with Rocky Plyer. I think some of that's been canceled because of the somber news and the shocking news of Franco's passing. But they're still going to honor him. They're still going to retire Franco's number at halftime, I believe, of the game. If I'm not mistaken, I think they announced that they're gonna paint they've painted the end zones gold to kind of as a sort of a callback to 1972 when the end zone was gold, or the end zones were gold. So it's still going to be a special. It's going to be a cold night. I know that, a very cold night. You have 2 6-8 teams going at it. So from what I understand, the attendance isn't expected to be that high, but hopefully there's a nice walk-up crowd. But it's hard to. It's kind of understandable in a way because it is Christmas Eve. It is going to be bitterly cold. I mean, historically cold. I was at the lowest attended game in Heinz Field history in 2013, and it was like 25 degrees or 20 degrees, something like that. It was bitterly cold because of the wind chill, but like tonight it's legit cold. It's below zero, and tomorrow it's supposed to be close to the same around game time. So hopefully it'll be an electric night and a fitting tribute to Franco. As far as the game, I was looking at, and I'm going to get back to Franco in a bit, but it's going to be a challenge. One of the live chatters in the beginning of the show, I didn't have time to highlight it because I was talking about Franco. He talked about the concern for covering Devontae Adams, the Raiders' fantastic receiver, and that's a legit concern. I mean, Adams is one of the best in the business. And the Steelers secondary, I don't think is that fantastic. It's at least not the cornerbacks anyway. So it's going to be a challenge. But it's not just Adams. It's Waller, the tight end, Josh Jacobs, the running back. They have a fantastic quarterback. I don't know, I say fantastic, but he's a really good quarterback in Derek Carr, who's given them fits in the past. So it's going to be a challenge for them offensively. I don't expect it to be a high-scoring game, mainly because of the weather. I mean, I think if you're in Pittsburgh, that the wind has been gusting all day, and it's supposed to be around the same conditions tomorrow night, Saturday night. So I don't expect it to be a night where the passing game dominates. I think it's going to be a game that's won in the trenches, which kind of would be fitting since that was the climate back in '72 when these two teams met in the divisional round. I think as far as Pittsburgh winning this game, I think it's they're going to have to rely on the ground game. It's not going to be a great night for passing for Pittsburgh or Oakland, Las Vegas. So it's going to be a challenge. The winner of this game stays alive for the playoffs temporarily and still hanging on by a thread. The loser is officially eliminated. So there is some things at stake. I was looking at the tiebreakers, the scenarios, and Pittsburgh basically has no tiebreakers going into the last 3 weeks. Essentially, the teams that are in front of them, and right now they're in 13th place. They're officially eliminated from winning the AFC North, by the way, in case you didn't know that already. And they can't even beat the Ravens out for second place, even if they win their last 3 games and beat the Ravens. The Ravens will win on like the 4th tiebreaker, which is a common opponent. So basically what they're hoping for is the 6th or 7th seed. And essentially of all the teams that are in front of them, only one, if they assuming they went out, let's say they went out to finish 9-8, only one other team between the Chargers, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots, and Jaguars or Titans, whoever loses the AFC South, only one other team can finish 9-8. So if two other teams in front of them finish 9-8, they are out because of tiebreakers. I mean, they have an atrocious conference tiebreaker, or I'm sorry, conference record. They're 2-7 right now. The best they can do is 5-7. Nobody else that would finish 9-8 would finish with a worse record than 6-6 in the conference. And then of course you throw in the fact that they would lose a head-to-head tiebreaker with the Patriots, the Jets, and the Dolphins. So their chances, that's why their chances right now are like 0.07. I think I heard on Friday, 0.07 of making the playoffs. So essentially they have to win out, and they have to hope that the Jets finish 1-2. They lost on Thursday night to the Jags, so that's one loss for them. They have to hope that the Patriots 1-2, and they have to hope that either the Chargers and or the Dolphins finish 0-3, and the Jags finish 1-2. So that's what has to happen for them to make the playoffs. Bare minimum, the Chargers have to finish 0-3, or the Dolphins have to finish 0-3. If only one of those teams finishes, then the Jets, Patriots, and Jags all have to finish 1-2, and they have to obviously win their last 3 games. That's how they make the playoffs. No other. They're not going to win any tiebreaker. I don't care what it is. They're not going to win any tiebreaker. So essentially, tomorrow is a playoff game for them, but that's only temporarily because they could be eliminated by as soon as Sunday if both the Chargers and Dolphins win. If both of those, they're both 8-6. If they both win, Pittsburgh's eliminated. So that's one thing that they can you can hang your hat on tomorrow night if you're watching that game, is Pittsburgh can still at least eliminate the Raiders and stay alive, albeit maybe temporarily. So, all right, let's see what else we have in my chat. And it's Steel Chick 46, who says Bad needs to get Tony a new mic. I'm not sure if it's a mic or if it's just internet or what it is, but it happens every Friday. Maybe it is the mic. I don't know if there's anything, if a new mic would even help, but it is annoying. It's not like I skip rope with the mic cord in between podcasts. So I don't know why every little nudge makes me lose sound, but it is annoying. And I do apologize because I want to put you guys, I want to put on a good show for you guys. And as you can see, when this kind of stuff happens, I start to talk too fast and I get mad and I stutter, and everything I'm prepared to say, I lose focus because of these technical problems, but whatever. It's not the end of the world. Here's one for Christopher 11 about Franco. And he says, my favorite Franco play was a 22-yard TD run. Oh, that's a great one. In Super Bowl 13. And what led up to the play with Hollywood Henderson? Yes, that's a great one, Christopher 11. In case you don't know that out there in Steeler Nation, it was early the fourth quarter, Super Bowl 13, Dallas against Pittsburgh. It's 21-17. Pittsburgh's in front. It's 3rd and 10 or something, like 3rd and 12, whatever it was. It was 3rd and long. I think Pittsburgh was there was a false start on the play. Pittsburgh moved early. A lineman moved early, but Hollywood Henderson, the Cowboys linebacker, still came in hard and put Bradshaw on the ground, which was unnecessary. But that was Hollywood in those days. He's the one who said that Bradshaw couldn't spell cat if he spotted him the C and the A. That's that guy. So Franco was always quiet and measured, but when he got mad, look out, because this was a big guy. He was 6'2", 230. He was as fast as a track star. He wasn't somebody to trifle with, and he was challenging. You could see him if you watch that highlights of that game. He's saying, "Hey, let's go out in the parking lot." He's challenging him to And then they get in the huddle for this 3rd and long call, and he says to Bradshaw, "I want the ball." Which is you want the ball on 3rd and 12, but he wanted the ball. He gave it to him right up the middle, 22-yard touchdown, 28-17. That was a great moment in that game. And of course, they went on to win that game 35-31. But that's a great great example there, Christopher Levin. Thank you for bringing that up. Claude Bishop, who reinforces what I said earlier, the Super Bowl's all-time leading rusher. Exactly right. And he started in 4. Think about that. He started in 4 Super Bowls. How many running backs can be durable enough to start in 4 Super Bowls? And yes, those 4 occurred within 6 years, but still, that's a tough position. And you know, the shelf life of your average running back, it's like 3 years, maybe. So for him to start in 4 Super Bowls, that says a lot about his endurance and his durability and his talents. So that, you know, he was just such a great player, such a great running back. This one from Chick 46 who asked, "Hey Tony, are you training for a marathon?" I am not. I just like to go run 2 or 3 times a week. I like the social aspect of it. It keeps me in shape. I'm 50 now. Keeps me somewhat in shape, and I like to socialize. I like to interact with people. Of course, you have a few beers afterwards, and you ruin your progress that you made during the run. But it's nothing I take seriously. Like I always tell people, running is the one thing maybe that I have zero ego about. I could care less if I finish last, if I'm by myself running, if I have the slowest time on earth. I don't care. I just like to do it because I know it's good for me, and I get to hang out with people afterwards and drink a few cold ones. And this one from Randy Wagner, who says, "I like to go to that game tomorrow, but I'm in Georgia. Anyone in the chat plan on being at this game?" Yeah. What about it, live chat? Is anybody out there at this game? That's going to be a challenge. I mean, for you, because it's going to be cold. And I still have frostbite in my right big toe from the game I attended in 2013 against the Bengals on Sunday Night Football. It was the coldest game I've ever been to. I know that. And it was brutal. And I had to spend half the game standing in the men's room just to stay warm. I didn't even want to see the game. That's how cold it was. So it's going to be a challenge. Was anybody going to that game? This one from Harvey Stone. Speaking of Pittsburgh's tie-breaking problem, they lost to every team in the AFC East. Ain't that right? And Harvey has a great picture of him and Franco. I believe it's Harvey. Yeah, it's a great picture. And yeah, that's what killed them. Had it been reversed and they had swept everybody in the East, which was a tall order. You got the Bills, you got the Dolphins. That's a pretty formidable division. But had they swept that division and got swept by the NFC South, they'd have a much better chance of making the playoffs, even at 6-8. You know, as far as tiebreakers, anyway. But I mean, yeah, sweeping the NFC South really did them no favors as far as the playoffs. This one from Just Me, and welcome Just Me. And she says, "My girlfriend flew from 68 Florida to 0 Pittsburgh today." I presume to be in that to go to that game. That's what I call a real fan right there. And another one from Just Me, and she says, "I worry about this game. We can't beat them very often." That's true. I mean, you look at their history with the Raiders. It's not a good one. I mean, it's I mean, there was that period where they seemed to have the Chiefs number. Remember that? Pittsburgh had the Chiefs number. It seemed like the Raiders have had their number for a long time, like going back to the late 00s, really. I mean, how many times has Pittsburgh defeated the Raiders over the last 15 years? I probably maybe count on 2 or 3 fingers. So it's gonna be a challenge. And the Raiders are a pretty formidable 6-8 team. And isn't it funny how their last game, how it ended, that weird way they scored that game-winning touchdown when it looked like it was going to go into overtime. The Patriots were trying to lateral, have some miracle of their own and get a bunch of laterals and get down the field, and they wound up throwing one too many laterals, and the Raiders picked it off and took it home for a touchdown. So that's kind of weird and almost surreal in that regard, that they're coming into this game on the heels of an ending like that, almost a miraculous finish of their own. And Randy Wagner points out, and I've heard this too on the secondary market, the last time he checked, tickets can be had for $11. Yeah, I mean it's it's sad that it's like this, but it's a perfect storm, no pun intended. I mean you have this wicked weather, and you have Christmas Eve. You have the fact that there were 6 and 8. It's just so many things came together at once, and it's a shame that more people aren't coming out to celebrate the life of Franco and his career and everything. But and the fact that he passed away unexpectedly, that probably is going to keep some people away too. So. Here's one from Randy Wagner. I love this. It was a crime that the NFL denied that game to be televised in Pittsburgh area in 1972. But those were the rules back then. Remember, this was like the very early. This is the start of what we know today as the crazy Steeler fan base, the passionate Steeler fan base. People who will go from 68-degree Florida, like just me's friend, to 0-degree Pittsburgh to see a game. It wasn't like that yet in 1972. Nobody knew they were going to win 4 Super Bowls and that the terrible tower would be created and all that other stuff. So it was a rule back then that home games had to be blacked out if they weren't sold out. So that's just how it was. I guess there were a few too many seats unsold for that game. This one from Steel Chick 46. She says, Tony, referring to running, when I was running, the bear at the end of the race was always the best. The beer. Yeah, the beer is that's my motivation. That and being social. This one from Just Me, who says, we have Christmas dinner or Christmas Eve dinner at 6 p.m. I'll be sitting at the TV at the kids' table. That's another real fan right there. And we all know Just Me is a real fan. That's what I would do too. Harvey Stone says Steelers need to cause a few turnovers and, of course, not turn it over for the win. And that's going to be a challenge with the weather being what it is. The Steel Chick says that she thinks T.J. Watt can rattle Carr. Yeah, I mean, he's due. He's due for a big breakout game since he's been back. He really hasn't had that shining moment just yet. All right, I think I'm going to take some time now to say what an honor it is really. I know everybody does podcasts now. Like we got a million podcasts, it seems like, on Behind Steel Curtain, but everybody in the world now does a podcast, right? Everybody. It seems like comedians, actors, just regular everyday people like me. Everybody has a podcast. So it's not like it's just 1 in a million chance, but the fact that I get to talk about the Immaculate Reception on the 50th anniversary of the event. Somebody who grew up a huge Steeler fan, obviously, or I wouldn't be here talking to you if I wasn't a big fan. To me, it's just a tremendous honor. And, my mom said to me the other day, I remember seeing you because I was born in 1972. That's another thing that I'm proud of even though I had nothing to do with it. The fact that I was born in 1972, the year that this all started. This whole crazy Steeler Nation thing started in 1972. That's the year I was born. To me, I've always worn that as a badge of honor for some weird reason. I've always felt proud of that as a Steeler fan. So the fact that I get to sit here and talk about the Immaculate Reception, and yes, it is obviously a very sad and somber time with the passing of Franco, and I'm honored to talk about that too. The fact that I get to share my thoughts about him too. I'm honored to do that as well. But I remember my mom saying, I remember seeing you in the bassinet when the game was on TV. And I said, no, you didn't. You didn't see the game on TV because it wasn't on in Pittsburgh. Unless you were in Newcastle or Youngstown, Ohio, or Steubenville, you didn't see that game. And of course she wasn't in any of those places. But that's the funny thing about the Immaculate Reception is literally millions of people claim that they saw it on TV. And it wasn't on in Pittsburgh. And hundreds of thousands of people claim that they were at Three River Stadium to see the play. Of course, only 55, 60,000 people were there. So it's just one of those plays. It's the most unique play in the history of sports, in my opinion. I mean, there was nothing before it that was like it and nothing after it like it. I mean, you think about how it everything transpired. I mean, it's 4th and long. There's 22 seconds left. It's hopeless. The Raiders had just scored to take a 7-6 lead with 1:17 left. And believe it or not, in 1972, a 1-point lead in the NFL was pretty darn big with it to go. You know, they didn't move the ball like they do today. Today, you could have 2 or 3 lead changes in a minute and 17 seconds, right? That's just how it is. But back then, I mean, that was, you pretty much had the game sewn up if you could take the lead with a minute and change left. So the fact that they're 4th and long, there's 22 seconds left. They're 65, whatever it was, yards away. No timeouts. And Bradshaw's back there scrambling, trying to find anybody to throw it to. He can't really, he even said, I just saw a black jersey at the last second after I ducked out of one more sack and I just let it loose. And he gets knocked on his butt and he doesn't know what's going on. And this ball is heading towards the legendary Franchi Fuqua, who's about to be smacked in the next week by Jack Tatum, the legendary safety of the Raiders. And the ball comes bounding backwards. And Franco, the reason why he was where he was, because he was taught by Joe Paterno, his college coach, to always run to the ball. So he happened to be in the right place at the right time and just barely reached down to catch that ball before it hit the turf. And according to him, he would never tell whether or not it hit the turf or not. To me, I like that mystery. And I like the mystery that Fuqua was always kept up about, I'm not going to tell you if I touched it or not. And of course, running to history. And something I didn't realize until this week is that touchdown, the Immaculate Reception touchdown, was the first touchdown in postseason history for the Steelers. I mean, you talk about a way to usher in what would eventually become a dynasty. You talk about what a way to turn the page from those first 40 years of your franchise's existence, which were nothing. Pittsburgh did nothing for 40 years. Nothing. No playoff wins. One playoff appearance in 40 years. I mean, they were the laughingstock. They were the Pirates of, people make fun of the Pirates. That's who the Steelers were back in the early 70s. I mean, that's who they were entering 1972. That's what people thought of them, right? They were a laughingstock of a franchise, and I can't think of a better way to usher in a dynasty than what happened on that play with Franco Harris and Terry Bradshaw and Franchi Fuqua and all the controversy that surrounded it. The fact that so many people reacted the same way to that play, meaning they didn't see it. Everybody claims that they saw it, that they were there, but even the people that actually were there didn't see it, including the players, because as soon as Tatum and Frenchie collided and the ball went ricocheting backwards, everybody just went, oh, the game's over. And then the Raiders went, oh, we won. But nobody actually saw what happened because nobody expected Franco to come out of nowhere, to quote Jack Fleming, the former play-by-play man, on a knight in shining armor. He came in and on a white stallion, I should say, and he came in and saved the day. So to me, it's an incredible honor, in spite of everything that happened with the sad passing of Franco. It's an incredible honor to be able to talk about that play with you guys tonight. And last thing I'll say is, rest in peace, Franco. And you were such a important figure in millions of people's lives. Whether you even knew it or not, you were that important. And part of the reason why we're all here, sitting here, people in the live chat, the millions of fans around the world, you played a huge part in that. So we're always going to remember you. So on that note, I hope you guys all have a Merry Christmas, a happy holiday. And I hope you enjoyed the game on Saturday. And until I talk to you on Monday, have a Merry Christmas and go Steelers. Goodbye, everybody.
Stop and check them out.